story begins with an airplane struggling through a terrifying storm. Our main character, Chuck, was calmly sitting and tilting, perhaps dozing or relaxing, when suddenly the cabin pressure dropped. The door of the cargo/tilt area burst open. A fire broke out in the cargo hold, and a dangerous explosion occurred. The pilot ordered Chuck to sit in his seat because they had to make an emergency landing in the sea. The pilot handed him a life raft and told him to fasten his seatbelt. The plane began descending rapidly. At that moment, the plane was about approximately 3,000 meters above the sea. Chuck then realized that the pocket watch given to him by his girlfriend had fallen. The pilot told him to wear the life jacket, which was on the right side. Because of the watch, Chuck unbuckled his seatbelt and staggered toward Ian to pick it up. But as soon as he grabbed the watch and tried to reach for the jacket, the plane tilted sharply, and he couldn't move. The pilot noticed he wasn't in his seat and unbuckled his own safety belt. Due to the violent jolts, the pilot was badly injured. The pilot managed to bring the plane down gently to touch the sea surface. However, due to the incorrect landing, water flooded into the cabin. Because Chuck hadn't fastened his seatbelt, his life was spared by chance. Suddenly, the top of the plane burst open, and seawater started rushing in. Fortunately, Chuck had an inflatable raft in his hands. As soon as he opened it, the part attached to the raft got stuck inside the plane. The sinking plane began pulling Chuck and the raft downward. But Chuck was lucky. The rope attached to the raft suddenly snapped, and the life raft pulled him out of the jaws of death. Finally, Chuck reached the surface of the sea alive. He used all his strength to try to climb onto the raft and held its edge tightly. However, he slowly started drifting toward the still-running engine. Seeing the danger behind him, he immediately closed his eyes. Just then, the engine caught fire, and the blast from the explosion threw him back into the sea. The entire plane sank into the sea with a massive explosion. But the danger was not over yet. Chuck had to face not only the strong winds and storm, but also one giant wave after another. He held tightly onto the rope of the life raft. Time passed, and suddenly, the air in the life raft escaped. Sharp rocks had torn it apart. This meant he had finally reached the shore. With his last remaining strength, he dragged the damaged raft to the shore. The next morning, when sunlight fell on his face, he realized he was alive and had washed up on a small island. But even after escaping death, he found no comfort because he had no idea what dangers awaited him on this strange island. He walked along, collecting scattered items from the plane, and began searching for other survivors like himself inside the island. But when he looked around, he was greeted only by endless silence. It was clear that he was trapped on an island that wasn't even on the world map. Is anyone here? To avoid dying on this island, he started thinking of various ways to save himself. At that time, the only effective method he had was to write "help" on the beach. Soon, night fell, and he was still hoping that some passing ship would spot him. But as the night grew darker, his hopes turned into fear because of the silence. He kept shivering upon hearing the sounds of dangerous animals in the jungle. The next day, he built a temporary shelter using the collected items and started checking the supplies that had come out of the plane. Now, apart from the pocket watch given by his girlfriend, he had nothing useful left. Thinking about the moments spent with Kelly, he regretted even more why he had boarded the plane. Actually, before Chuck left on his business trip, and Kelly had given him the pocket watch, promising that they would get married as soon as he returned for Christmas. But a sudden plane crash had stopped that wedding. While his entire family had accepted that Chuck had died in the crash, he stubbornly remained alive. Finding food and water on this deserted island had become a huge challenge, and no one knew how long Chuck could survive. He had collected many company parcels, but decided not to open them, because for him, it was a matter of honesty. Even though he was stranded on a remote island, he didn't want to break the customer's trust. The help sign he had made on the beach the previous day had been washed away by the waves. He had to write "help" again, using some broken wood. Slowly, the will to survive grew stronger in Chuck's heart. He knew that if he wanted to get out of there, he had to stay alive at all costs. On this barren little island, there was nothing edible except hard coconuts. And without any tool to crack them, opening coconuts was also very difficult. Finally, he cracked a coconut with a sharp stone and drank its water, which felt like nectar to him at that moment. He didn't settle for just coconuts. Chuck decided to explore other parts of the island to fill his stomach. He wanted to climb the highest peak to get a full view, but the sharp, rocky terrain made the path extremely difficult. So he cut some fabric from his pants with a stone, mixed it with leaves, and made makeshift shoes. When he reached the top, he realized it really was a deserted island. The sea stretched endlessly in all directions, but there was no sign of any other human. Feeling disappointed and wondering how he would survive, his attention was suddenly caught by something strange in the distance. Without thinking, he ran toward it. He thought it might be another pilot who had also survived. But when Chuck turned the body over, he discovered that the person had been dead for a long time. With a heavy heart, he dragged the pilot's body, took some useful items from it, a pair of shoes, a torch that still worked, and a useless wallet. Then he dug a grave for the pilot, buried the body, and wrote the date of death on a rock. In the evening, Chuck sat on the beach, looking at the shoes, feeling a strange sadness. He thought that maybe next time, the one lying in the grave would be him. Because of this, he couldn't sleep at night. He realized that if he kept sitting like this, death was certain. The next day, he learned survival skills in the jungle. He collected dew from leaves in a coconut shell and sharpened a wooden stick to make a spear for catching fish. That same night, while signaling, he saw a light. He shouted loudly and signaled with a torch, but it was too far away. When the light disappeared, his heart filled with anger and helplessness. The next day, he took the torn raft and headed toward the ship, but the waves kept pushing him back. Eventually, a sharp rock injured his thigh. He returned wounded. In the evening, heavy rain and a storm began. He covered the company packages with the raft material and took shelter in a small cave with his injured leg. Exhausted, he fell unconscious. The next day, he woke up in severe pain. There were signs of maggots in the wound. To stay alive, he finally decided to open the parcels. In the parcels, he found videotapes, a volleyball, a beautiful woman's long dress, and skates. He left the last parcel unopened. He applied foam to the wound, bandaged it with shoelaces, used the skate blades, and made a fishing net from the dress's mesh. Finally, he ate a full meal for the first time. While trying to light a fire, his hands got cut. In anger, he threw the volleyball. Then, an idea came to his mind. He drew eyes and a smile on it with blood. He named it Wilson and made it his friend. Wilson gave Chuck new strength. He lit a fire, cooked food, and started sending signals. 4 years passed. Chuck had become a wild man. Unable to bear the toothache, he pulled out his own tooth. One day, he found a piece of metal sheet. This gave him the idea to build a boat. He made a raft using wood, branches, and ropes made from videotape. Before leaving, he argued with Wilson, then apologized and brought him back. Finally, the winds became favorable. Chuck launched the boat into the sea with Wilson. A storm came, and Wilson drifted away. Chuck jumped into the sea to save him, but Wilson was lost. Heartbroken, Chuck gave up. Just then, the horn of a large cargo ship sounded. The crew spotted him. Many years later, Chuck returned home. He became famous, but all he wanted was to meet Kelly. A man opened the door. "I'm Kelly's husband." Chuck understood. Kelly had gotten married and become a mother. The company threw a dinner for him with fish and crabs. Seeing them, Chuck remembered the island. The next day, he delivered the last parcel and gave a thank you letter. That parcel had saved his life, but he had never opened it. And so, this wonderful story ends. If you liked our story, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. See you in the next video. Take care, and don't forget to like this video.